Proviron, unlike some of the other DHT derivatives that we have available to us, like oxandrolone or masteron or primobolan, has very distinct, very unique properties. If you dive deep into the medical journals regarding 5-alpha reductase, regarding DHT's effect on 5-alpha reductase, regarding the androgen receptors regulation of 5-alpha reductase enzymes, and you try to kind of connect everything together, likely what you're going to conclude is that DHT itself upregulates both the androgen receptor function as well as 5-alpha reductase enzymes. Now look, there are strategies to upregulate 5-AR, including the use of glycine, potentially the use of oxytocin. Then of course there's like the necessary cofactor for 5-alpha reductase expression, which is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate, or NADPH. But it appears that DHT in and of itself can upregulate specifically the 5-alpha reductase 1 isoenzyme. Now, Proviron or Masterolone is basically synthetic DHT. It's as close to DHT as you're going to get compared to all the other DHT derivatives. It has a very DHT-like feeling. It has a very strong potentiated effect on the sexual system, right? Comparable to actual DHT. And I've personally seen Proviron do a range of things, from healing people's sexual dysfunction, whether it was SSRI induced, finasteride induced, hyperprolactinemia induced, which we're going to get to, or they were just on TRT and weren't converting enough of their tests to DHT. And so, the balance in the hormone ratios just wasn't right for them to get adequate sexual function. But what I've also seen in myself, right, which is an N=1, but also clients, is that Masterolone or Proviron changes the trajectory of their TRT tenure moving forward. It gives them a better response to testosterone. It seems to induce a more pronounced response to testosterone in terms of the conversion to dihydrotestosterone. And we're going to get into all this. Now, it's largely a good thing. It could also be a bad thing. There are positives to, Proviron basically amplifying your response to TRT somewhat permanently, and there are also negatives to that. I think it's useful for different people in different situations, so let's get into it. The video, this is the last week because we won't have any more bottles left of the Cortex stack where it's buy one get one free. You got to pull the trigger now. Code for that is cortexbogo. The code and the link is down in the description of this video. If you need my help on TRT, hormone optimization, sexual dysfunction, erectile dysfunction, dopamine restoration, host of other specialties, you can hire me in under a minute at livecortex.com. I got 30 days, 90 days, 180 days, or a 1-year one-on-one program where it's basically me designing your entire protocol and working with you along the way. You can hire me in under a minute at livecortex.com. So what I want to do in this video is speaking from a collection of anecdotal experiences, client work, my own personal experiences, and scouring over many years, but specifically the last 2 years, a real deep dive into everything DHT, everything 5-alpha reductase, everything androgen receptor expression, and how all that kind of plays together that ultimately leads to an androgenic optimization of an individual. I think Proviron changes the course of people's TRT protocols. I think Proviron changes the way that you respond to TRT, specifically in terms of conversion of testosterone into DHT. Like, it changes it moving forward after you've done enough of a run with Proviron. I think Proviron has permanent effects, permanent masculinization effects, so long as a person is continuing to use exogenous hormones, exogenous testosterone. I also think that Proviron has the ability to upregulate the 5-alpha reductase enzyme, specifically 5-AR1. Proviron or Masterolone is as close as you're going to get to DHT, so let's just hammer that point home. Again, it is technically called 1-methyl DHT, and it is specifically DHT with a methyl group at the C1A position. So it's a small chemical modification of DHT. So one of the first papers that I came across in trying to make the argument that Proviron enhances the conversion of test to DHT, even after you stop taking it, is titled Androgen Regulation of 5-alpha reductase isoenzymes in Prostate Cancer. Now, a lot of the research on this you're going to find is in prostate cancer, so you have to try to extrapolate wisely. Basically, they ran a lot of experiments with androgens and with DHT specifically, the testosterone as well as just DHT, to try to figure out, okay, what was the effect on some of the genes that encode the 5-alpha reductase enzymes that effectively make them work. They treated cells with concentrations of androgens that are close to the castrate. I think that was like below 50 nanograms per deciliter. Physiologic, which is, 230 to 1,000 nanograms per deciliter, and supraphysiologic levels. And their analysis showed that DHT treatment resulted in an increased level of SRD SRD5A1. Now, SRD5A1 is ultimately the gene that facilitates the encoding of 5-alpha reductase isoenzyme type 1. So what we're finding here is that DHT treated cells increase the levels of the gene that encodes 5-alpha reductase isoenzyme 1. What is the takeaway there? I think the takeaway is that DHT or methyl DHT, which is what Proviron is, can upregulate 5-alpha reductase activity. Now, here's another interesting thing. So you would think, maybe does it work in the other direction? Like if you've got less DHT, will that reduce 5-alpha reductase enzymes? In this same paper, they alluded to the fact that androgen ablation, which is the removal, the muting or the removal of a tissue, in this case, an androgenic tissue, decreased immunostaining, which is just kind of one measure for the function of a particular enzyme, for 5-alpha reductase. So, okay, you remove the androgens at significant quantity, you're going to get downregulation of 5-alpha reductase. So what we think we have here is we think we have DHT, or, I'm making the case that likely and potentially musterolone upregulates 5-alpha reductase activity, and the reduction, the muting, the removal of androgens, but specifically DHT, leads to a downregulation of 5-alpha reductase. Now, this is relevant for people that are thinking about taking finasteride, and obviously people that have taken finasteride and are dealing with some of the ongoing sexual symptoms, that the inhibition of DHT likely led to ongoingly a deficiency in 5-alpha reductase's ability to function, right? Sort of a reduction of that enzyme or a reduction of the function of that enzyme. Therefore, you're not converting enough of your testosterone into DHT. A lot of PFS people that go on testosterone don't have resolution of their symptoms, right? Because they're just not converting enough of their T to DHT, in addition to a whole host of other potential problems. All right, moving on. Let's go to a paper that is titled Dihydrotestosterone Stimulates 5-alpha Reductase Activity in Pubic Skin Fibroblasts, in which they go on to say that DHT had no effect on cell DNA, whereas it resulted in a dose-dependent increase in 5-alpha reductase activity. In 7 of these pubic skin fibroblasts that were tested, DHT increased 5-alpha reductase activity 2 to 4-fold over the control levels. Interestingly, this effect, the effect of increasing 5-alpha reductase activity from DHT, was abolished by administering a compound called cyproterone acetate. Cyproterone acetate is actually one of the long-standing kind of historical anti-androgen compounds, and it likely works either via messing with the SRD5-alpha-1 gene, which again encodes the 5-alpha reductase enzyme, or it's doing it directly via inhibiting 5-alpha reductase. It also says that T, but not estradiol, because estradiol actually has an inhibitory response on 5-alpha reductase. That's something I found in the literature too. It's not very significant, but that is something to consider for people. So testosterone, but not estradiol or cortisol, also increased 5-alpha reductase activity. But that's not always the case in people with severe 5-alpha reductase deficiencies, right? You're going to need loads of testosterone to the point where you're going to have side effects out the fucking wazoo to even make a movement, which is, why in a lot of cases DHT or methyl DHT Proviron is usually suggested. Now, this effect of Proviron in changing a person's TRT protocol, likely via upregulating 5-alpha reductase enzymes, and therefore just changing the whole ratio, the whole hormone ratio. Like thereafter, they're converting more of their testosterone into dihydrotestosterone, which will change things, largely going to change the sexual system, may have negative effects on hair loss, BPH, prostate health, things of that nature. Depends on the person. There's a host of other things that contribute to that. But me and Dave Lee actually talked about this in our recent podcast. So Dave took Proviron for 2 years and explained that after dosing Proviron, it changed the course of his TRT tenure. And that after running Proviron for such a long time, TRT basically gave some of those same positive results that Proviron typically gives, which is usually very unique and distinct from just testosterone alone. So what did Proviron do to Dave Lee that now he's got that Proviron-like response from just testosterone? Likely upregulated the 5-ARs. Let's take a look. I've heard you talk about how over time taking testosterone long-term, kind of androgenizes a person in a way where there are positive benefits as the years go on. First of all, what was your Proviron protocol? Was there tests involved or was it just Proviron? Secondly, how was it on libido, erections, etc.? How did you feel? And thirdly, do you think that has something to do with, you alluding to this notion of androgen therapy over time providing ongoing effects?
Yeah. I love this topic. And recently, so I deal with this kind of case all the time. And now I use cream instead of injectable testosterone and Proviron for the same application. But it's creating the scenario being like, this individual, and in this case it was myself, needs more in the DHT department. And now, in terms of why did I need this, I'm not sure. I mean, I have theories. I had a pretty severe brain injury in my mid-20s, and recovery from that was when I started TRT. So maybe there was some PTSD, high cortisol, I don't know, high prolactin, whatever. But I was in a scenario where, so for the first couple of years when I was on TRT, I was taking every different exemestane, Arimidex protocol under the sun. I had, at one point, I had 1 milligram exemestane capsules compounded. I was dissolving the anastrozole tablet in like a dropper thing so that I could fucking take like
yeah. I've seen that.
I did it all. And if I didn't take the anastrozole, I felt worse, but the anastrozole gave me side effects, which led me to Proviron, which was just bro science. It was just going, okay, well, DHT analog, Proviron is prescription in Australia. So Proviron was appealing because it's the closest to bioidentical DHT out of the derivatives. It's not liver toxic and it's mild. So, and it was available. So it ticked all the boxes. And when I took Proviron for 2 years, it gave me the effects that just TRT gives me now. It gives me the effects that I think TRT should have given me all along, and what I see in my clients, which is it just worked. I just got, it just felt better. I felt less anxious. I felt more calm and rested. I felt more stoic. I felt more driven. I felt less fear. Like all of the things that I was subjectively in tune with, it fixed. So I no longer needed it. And I don't know if my body, if I just got, through a difficult period in my body, which was particularly stressful at that point, and it was a Band-Aid, or whether it made me now metabolize testosterone. Maybe it, androgenized me over 2 years and now I metabolize testosterone better. Yeah. I don't know, but it was a very interesting experience for me. And the only reason I haven't made an instructional kind of lecture on it is that because there's so much nuance, I know that it will just get kind of taken out of context. And people.
Okay, so we'll just couch it there. What I think happened with Dave is what I'm contending is the case with Proviron in these cases is that it upregulated 5-alpha reductase activity and therefore changed the reduction of testosterone into DHT in response to just exogenous testosterone. Dave is not the only person that, like in my wheelhouse, that I've seen this happen to. I had a guy that had hyperprolactinemia from pituitary adenoma for many years. Didn't even know about it, just had weak sexual function and couldn't recover in the gym and a host of other problems for many, many fucking years. Turns out he's got a tumor in his pituitary that secretes prolactin. Now, prolactin, relative to 5-alpha reductase activity in this paper here titled Hyperprolactinemia and 5-alpha reductase activity, inhibits the 5-ARs. Okay, so prolactin is another inhibitor of 5-alpha reductase activity. So I had a guy that got his prolactin down with cabergoline, right, into range. It was in range for 6 straight months on a TRT protocol, HCG, largely managing the estrogen, still no sexual function. We bring Proviron in. We had to run it for 2 months straight at 25 milligrams in addition to the TRT protocol. Suddenly, while on Proviron, now gets a response to TRT. Well, the sexual symptoms resolved. After the hyperprolactinemia, the guy couldn't get his erections or libido back. The whole thing was still fucking muted, even with 1,200 nanograms per deciliter total testosterone. Bring Proviron into the picture. Well, now the whole thing changed. On Proviron, erections, libido, nocturnal erections, morning erections, the whole sexual system, even ejaculatory reflexes, climax sensation, climax ability, penile sensation, all that shit comes back. Interestingly, when we remove the Proviron after a nice trial run of it, all the positive benefits that the person was getting from Proviron in terms of sexual function remained present thereafter just on TRT. And look, in this paper, their data on one hand confirms that 5-alpha reductase is inhibited by hyperprolactinemia. On the other hand, they go hyperprolactinemia-induced block of 5-alpha reductase appears to be rapidly reversible because the enzyme is reactivated within 48 to 72 hours. But this is a case in which they manufactured hyperprolactinemia for a short period of time. If you've got elevated prolactin, for 4 fucking years or 2 years. Well, there's no study on that. And it is likely that fully downregulates the 5-alpha reductase enzymes, which would kind of make sense in the case of my client with a pituitary tumor. I've done content regarding mysterolone and the upregulation of 3 binding domains on the androgen receptor, facilitating post-receptor binding transactivation and genetic expression, which facilitates ultimately the androgenic response. And this was a situation in which Proviron basically fixed these mutated binding sites on the androgen receptor when DHT or your inherent DHT couldn't. So Proviron has all manner of uses, especially in mutated androgen receptors. At least that's my theory at this point, but also serious sexual dysfunction, and in cases where people think they don't express enough of either the gene that encodes 5-alpha reductase or 5-alpha reductase type 1 isoenzyme itself. And the overarching point of this video is to say that I believe Proviron changes people's TRT protocols, like it changes their experience on TRT, like it did Dave's, like it did mine, which I'm going to get to, like it did my client with hyperprolactinemia for many years, and like it has done with many people that I've seen over the course of many years doing this. It's that likely by optimizing androgen receptor function, which by the way also regulates 5-alpha reductase activity, and increasing 5-alpha reductase encoding, that therein people are getting radical resolution of some of these long-standing issues, particularly the lack of expression of 5-alpha reductase and the stoppage, the blockade of the conversion of test to DHT. Now look, let's talk about caveats with Proviron. Proviron is methylated DHT. It is likely going to cause you hair loss. I ran 26 straight days with Proviron and started to have some significant shedding to the point where I had to get off of both Proviron as well as the test cream that I was on and just straight run test prop for TRT, which I'm totally happy about. Like I had a great fucking time on Proviron. But interestingly, that run of Proviron has changed my response to testosterone to an extent. I never really had issues converting test to DHT, but I noticed differences in a couple things. I mean, some of it's subjective, like masculinity, kind of, my mental perspective on things. Like it's all for the good. I also noticed just on TRT though, still more shedding, and my DHT has come back down to high normal. It's not super physiologic like it was on Proviron and cream, but there's still a degree of hair shedding that is taking place there, and it's likely via an enhanced conversion of test to DHT. Luckily, genetically, like I'm pretty good in that arena. But for sure, it's like catalyzing a different response in me personally to testosterone. Largely a favorable one. I have somewhat of a different response, to testosterone than I did previous. So I guess the major takeaway is I just wanted to point out some of the literature and make the case that Proviron might just upregulate 5-alpha reductase activity like we know DHT does. And for people with 5-alpha reductase deficiencies or people with the inability to use just exogenous testosterone and get specifically the sexual and androgenic benefits from androgens, bringing Proviron in for a period, it might be 30 days at 25 milligrams a day. It might be 60 days at 25 milligrams a day. It might need to be 90 days. It might need to be 180 days at 25 milligrams a day. It's unclear, but I time and time again, based on what I've seen, based on connecting all these dots in the literature, I always have to come back to Proviron is restorative. All right, guys, if you need to hire me for TRT protocol optimization, sexual dysfunction, erectile dysfunction, libido optimization, libido restoration, dopamine restoration, nootropic regimen design, hormone protocol regimen design, and a host of other things, you can do so in under a minute at livecortex.com. I got a 3-month, I got a 1 month, I got a 6 month, I got a 1 year, and I also got a specific to TRT protocol design consultation where it's a call with me and then a follow-up protocol design for you. You can hire me in under a minute at livecortex.com. Cortex Nootropic Stack, my brainchild for pretty instant stimulant energy. I mean, it beats all other stimulants out there for focus, flow, productivity, mental energy, motivation. It's insane. At buy one, get one free. Okay, so the code for that is cortexbogo. The link is down in the description of this video. Go support the channel. Please go buy a bottle. We've got a certain amount of bottles left to move, and we need to push these out, guys. All right, boys, it has been an absolute pleasure hanging out with you. I hope you had a great week so far. I hope you're ready for the weekend. Much more content coming soon. Live stream this Saturday, 9 a.m. Eastern time. Make sure you've got notifications. It looks like I'm trying to coordinate a podcast with Mike from Balance My Hormones over there in the UK. They do a lot of really interesting content with a lot of really cool fucking people. So likely I'm going to be on Mike's podcast. So I'll keep you guys posted on that. Otherwise, brother, enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of your week. And I'll talk to you guys on the next one.